Hello and welcome to this news hour. I am Daniel Kasahun with the news. The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, Demek Makonnen, said the U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Mr. Jeffrey Feltman, had a candid discussion with him. The Deputy Prime Minister spoke in detail about the genesis of the TPLF attack on the Northern Command of the Ethiopian National Defense Force, including all the destructive acts of the group leading to the present day. The invading force is currently carrying out open invasions, looting and killings in the Afar and Amhara regions, said Demek, highlighting the overwhelming humanitarian, economic and social crimes the group has been committing in the state regions. While committing all these crimes and treasons, the Deputy Prime Minister said the United States government chose silence, which was uncharacteristic of the fraternal relationship between the two nations. He expressed Ethiopia's standing expectations that the United States would properly commend the destructive acts of the invading forces in a way that fits the relationship between the two countries. The Special Envoy, Jeffrey Feltman, on his part said the United States government perfectly understands the views of the people of Ethiopia on the TPLF. He said maintaining, affirming and sustaining Ethiopia's sovereignty, peace and unity are the fundamentals of the United States policy of Ethiopia. Mr. Feltman underscored that the relationship between the two countries has regional significance and will continue to be based on these same anchors. Feltman is expected to hold talks with various government officials during his stay in Ethiopia. Office of the Prime Minister on Tuesday briefed religious leaders, members of different civic institutions and other segments of the society about the current situation in Ethiopia. Speaking on the occasion, Minister for Democracy Zadig Abraha said the untold story behind the war in Tigray is the economic sabotage being carefully done in the country to cripple the central government. The country is not only fighting the actual war in war fronts, but economic sabotage and propaganda warfare launched against the government and people of Ethiopia, the minister said. The continued pressure that the government of Ethiopia has been receiving from some Western governments over the past months was a direct attack to the country's sovereignty, it was noted. Zadig urged participants to understand the real situation their country is in and support government's effort to finish the war off so that the country will get its peace. The deadlock between Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt on the issue of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam still remains unsolved as the three countries failed to strike a deal, despite Ethiopia's fervent desire to stick to the African Union-led negotiation. Egypt and Sudan repeatedly opted to take the matter to the Security Council, where they did not get what they wanted. Ethiopian scholars are now urging the country not to relent to any external negotiators, bid that may emanate from a neo-colonialism spirit. Jerusalem Bazaar reports.
Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan could not still break the deadlock on their dispute regarding Ethiopia's mega hydropower dam on the river Abai. Despite Ethiopia's effort to clarify its position for an equitable use of the Nile, Egypt and Sudan repeatedly attempted to securitize the matter by taking it to the UNSCC a couple of times. Although Ethiopia opposed the move to take a developmental matter to the UNSCC, the platform created a good opportunity for the East African nation to tell the truth to the world and assert the notation of African solutions to African problems.
From the very beginning, Ethiopians have said repeatedly they don't want to harm anyone in this process, and which genuinely is true. And if there is some issues to be raised and be addressed by the Africans, because we can solve the problems by negotiation within African context. But as Engineer Seleshi said, the Egyptians didn't want to happen, and they took it to that level. And Ethiopia demonstrated again its stance by its own. It stands for its rights, and also it gave a big exemplary positioning again in the history of Africa, that Ethiopia is for Africa, and Ethiopia believes in Africans. And by the same token, Africans also believe in Ethiopia. The good thing is Ethiopians also start learning about the politics of water. Both the people, the diplomats, and the technicians too. So I think it's a big success.
Demis also underlined that Ethiopians should be watchful to the neocolonialism approach of some global actors with the name of mediation and democracy on the issue of GERD.
I have no doubt that Americans were thinking, which the Europeans failed to do, to colonize Ethiopia in absentia from abroad through instrumentalities. Okay? The neocolonialism thinking was emanating from ideas like from Lord Rugard, a British, who said, let them have their so-called independence, but let them have that independence with a ruling elite which we can control. If we give that elite something of, a nice thing of how to live, then we can manage the rest. That is not happening in Ethiopia for good. But it seems there was some sort of conspiracy that they were almost reaching to the level and the extent they want to make Ethiopia colonized in absentia. And I make a call for Ethiopians to waken up and work against this movement.
A senior policy advisor on sustainable development for UN and instructor at Addis Ababa University, Konstantinos Brutesva Konstantinos, for his part stressed the need for a continued diplomatic effort with all riparian nations and with international entities to reach a win-win solution.
We should engage the Sudanese and the Egyptians on parallel diplomacy. We have the tripartite agreement that's going on under the age of the AU, and also we have to do bilateral diplomatic efforts to be able to convince our friends and the international community. And therefore it will be important that the legal crafting of this treaty that's going to come in terms of agreement between the three countries or between the entire Nile riparian states. It's very important. We have to have other Nile riparian states with us: Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, Burundi, Rwanda, DRC. All these countries, we have to have good diplomatic stance with these countries.
Ethiopia has been filling its mega dam for the second year, where the dam's reservoir is expected to hold 13.5 billion cubic meters of water.
Scholars call on Ethiopians and the Ethiopian government to stay defiant to orchestrated interventions by some Western powers that tend to impose their national interests. In an exclusive interview with ETV English, they said solidifying national unity and solidarity is key to quash ill-intentioned interferences. Sabotage Shagri has the details.
The continued outcry echoed by some Western powers about the war in Tigray faded away, despite PLF's belligerent incursions to neighboring regional states, violating the unilateral ceasefire declared by the government. Their silence can be considered as a strong support for the PLF to weaken the legitimate government that is, according to Temesgen Thomas, who is the vice president of Wachamo University. Temesgen said these Western governments are desperate to restore the PLF to power so that they can impose their interests.
They are struggling to bring back now the former EPRDF region that is mainly dominated by TPLF, because this regime had served to the best of its capacity the interest of these foreigners. Because of this, they are still supporting, or they are struggling in order to bring back this regime into power. To do so, they are supporting this terrorist group. They are standing for the interest of this group.
Werku Jacob, who is a senior researcher for international relations and diplomacy, for his part said some Western countries need to respect the sovereignty of Ethiopia despite differences.
US is a big state, globally is a big actor. I mean, I think it's a big actor by far. You cannot compare with Ethiopia. But we are equal in one terms. We are sovereign states. US is a sovereign state, Ethiopia is a sovereign state, and that should be respected. As a sovereign state, Ethiopia can say whatever it wants. And so right now, Ethiopian government is in the right track.
According to Werku, any act from the US to impose things without the consent of Ethiopia can be considered as a growing colonial sentiment.
Because the government is trying to make this country into the democratic progress and development track. So this effort should have been supported by in particular by the U.S. government. But what they are requiring is beyond the government's demand. So that is, we consider this as it is a neo-colonial mindset up. So without the invitation of the sovereign state, if a country postures itself with the way the U.S. is doing, that is unacceptable.
The scholars also urged all Ethiopians to say no to foreign interventions, drawing lesson from what happened to countries like Syria and Libya.
What we are observing in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Somalia, in Yemen, in Iraq, all these shows, and in the process of pursuing their national interest, they are not taking care for the peace, for the stability, for economic well-being, welfare of that particular state. That's why we are seeing very disparate people throughout the world. Why they are begging? The Syrians are begging here in Addis Ababa because of the foreign intervention, the Western intervention, their bland intervention, inhuman intervention.
What has happened in Afghanistan is they should learn from that country, because they forcibly they intervene in that country now after long years of fight. Taliban now controls the state. So in any effort by the US government, when they forcibly intervene, in the end what happens is chaotic circumstances. This has happened in Libya as well. So this is a good. This is now, I think, one of good examples, the recent one. If we leave alone even the Libyan experience.
It is to be recalled that the Ethiopian government has been openly complaining about continued pressures from the US and its allies.
Media reports show UNICEF's military intervention in Afghanistan targets natural resources, not terrorists. Africans, hence, need to wake up and halt any UNICEF's military interventions media reports indicate. Sindayo Tamrat tells us more.